very much, Shaista, for your kind introduction. I don't think any of the panelists who are esteemed panelists who are sitting over here need any introduction. So I would start the proceedings of this panel discussion. So I'm very glad to see that there is a very, a very representative representation of the banking industry in this forum is because, thank you, is because we've got two of the large conventional banks, two of the large and very vibrant conventional banks, and also two of the other large and vibrant Islamic banks present over here. So I think we should be able to converse a lot about the conversion journey of different banking institutions and the overall banking industry in general, and also with the specifics of the role of Sukuk in this important transformation for the banking industry, which probably is going to be happening at this scale for the first time in the world. And I assume, obviously, there is going to be a presentation as well, which is going to be the introduction presentation by Mr. Irfan Siddiqui from Meezan Bank Limited, which obviously is going to cover some bits of Sukuk, and also probably is going to talk about some of the important aspects of Islamic banking. So I would first like to request Mr. Irfan Siddiqui to initiate with his presentation, and then we will follow it up with a panel discussion. Thank you.
कोई presentation is the presentation loaded? Okay, right. Sorry, just tested. Right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Assalamu alaikum. The last speech by Justice Mansoor Saab obviously was very eloquent, so I hope you will excuse us for not being as nice in talking, but mashallah, very, very full of information and data. So, a lot of appreciation for that. I think my focus today would be to, for this panel discussion to proceed, is to show where do we stand right now in terms of sovereign Sukuk issuance, because there are two types of Sukuks. One is sovereign Sukuk, the other one is our corporate Sukuk, where, normally in conventional term, you would lend money to ABC company. Now, instead of lending them money, if you want to securitize that, you do a Sukuk issuance, right? And the securities and risk and rewards, everything would be similar to what you do in a normal lending transaction. But right now, my focus is on the sovereign Sukuk, because in my view, that is the single most important aspect for Pakistan to convert fully into Sharia compliant, and if not fully, how we go towards that become fully. So since 2020, when we started our Sukuk program, which was seen in that video, very nicely made video by AlBaraka Forum, 172 Sukuks has been issued by Government of Pakistan under multiple tenors. And I'm happy to say that Meezan Bank, along with DIB, Bank Islami, Al-Falah Bank, are working actively with Ministry of Finance for regulatory issues in Sukuk. So these banks are the joint financial advisors. So up to 1 year, up to now, they've issued recently fixed term Sukuk. 3 years are both fixed and variable, 5 years is fixed and variable, and even 10 years, we have Sukuk for fixed and variable, which came very recently. If you see this chart, this is growing, mashallah, steadily from 2020, when we started that year with 561 billion, and in 2024, the amount was 2 trillion. But this 2 trillion compared to our need is, I would say, minuscule. It's very, 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 very small, especially with the conversion process. Now the conventional bank, when they're converting, like National Bank, in their assets into Islamic, they would need Sukuks. So up to now, where conventional banks were not active, these Sukuks were just about enough, I would say less than enough, to meet the need of the market. But now with rapid expansion of that phase, this 2 trillion is a very, very small number. And because the sukuks are actually sold by a bidding process, similar to the T-bills and PIBs in conventional terms, the pricing of that is determined by supply and demand. So if there are less sukuks, then the pricing would come down. So just as you all aware of, the Federal Sharia Court in April of 22 decided that the banking system should convert into Islamic by 2028. And in October 24, an amendment in Constitution was also passed to do that. And the landscape right now is that right now we have about 23% market which is converted into Islamic, which is about 2/3 dominated by the dedicated Islamic banks and 1/3 by the conventional windows. So I hope that with this process, the conventional windows portion would rise rapidly. And obviously the idea, the target of January 2028 is that we convert to 100%. Whether we go 100% or anywhere from 22% to 100%, I think that will be a credit to all of us. Because it's all depend on your intention and niyat. When we reach that 100%, we should not be worried about it. We should say that as it comes, we'll take it. But inshallah, we have to work hard to come to that 100%. To give you a total idea of how small the sukuk market is compared to the conventional, the conventional securities which are already issued amount to 38 trillion rupees, which are held by banks, insurance companies, mutual funds, everybody. I'm sure National Bank must have a large portion of that. So 38 trillion is issued, and Islamic compared to that 38 trillion is only 5 trillion. So if you can imagine the smallness of that thing, the market is 22%, so this is a lot lower than 22%. So in total, conventional Islamic accounts for 43 trillion. Securities which are held by banks in conventional banks is 25 trillion, and so it leaves some room for other people to buy those securities as well. But Islamic, because there is less security, 4.2 out of the 5 is held by banks. Now, if you see the next line, compared to a total deposit base of 25 trillion in conventional banks, they have securities worth of 25 trillion. It doesn't mean that they put all their deposits in securities. Is that they borrow from State Bank as well and invest in securities. But to show the quantum is 1:1. Whereas in Islamic Bank, our total deposit size was 7.3 trillion, out of which only 4.2 trillion was available, which is 58%. So as a result, there's always a price, I would not say a price war, but a price pressure on it. And hence, on average, for the last 2 years, the difference between Islamic yield on Islamic sukuk is roughly 1.5% lower than the conventional T-bills. So I think that makes the playing field a little bit like the roads in Karachi. You understand what I mean? It's uneven. So it's not level playing field. So why do we need sukuk? Is to fulfill banks' SLR requirement, effective liquidity management, fulfill budgetary requirements of the government, and it's an alternative to T-bills and PIB, and mainly to achieve the government vision of converting this banking system into Islamic. Like I said, risk of repeating myself, if there are no government securities to support the conversion, I'm not saying may not happen, I'm saying it will not happen because it's not possible without government securities. So what we need to do is identify new government assets for Ijara Sukuk issuance. I believe the Ministry of Finance along with these banks are talking to the Pakistan Railways now, which have got a large asset bank. And if that happens, that is in trillions, so we should be able to get a good stock of sukuks from that. The next point is very important, is to explore asset-light sukuk structures for issuance of hybrid sukuk or asset-light structure. I think Ijlal is here from Bahrain. People like them can assist us to see how Because right now the problem is that all the Sukuk issuance right now requires 100% asset base. And to find free assets with Government of Pakistan is also always a challenge. So it's important that we have this asset light structures in place. And also with that, we should issue short-term Sukuks of 3 months and 6 months to really make Islamic banking more vibrant. So that was all, I think. So anything else we can cover in the question answer session. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Irfan Sahab. I think you have set the right tone for discussions on the transformation and the conversion process. We as consultants are helping a number of institutions out in their conversion journey from conventional Islamic, and obviously one of the most formidable challenges that we are witnessing in terms of the conversion, which obviously to follow an asset-led conversion model for the banks in Pakistan. Obviously, Pakistan is going to be one of the few countries or one of the only countries in the world which is pursuing such an aggressive conversion journey that by 2027 end, we will have to convert 100%, not just by the banking institutions, but also all the other parts of the economy, which is DFIs, microfinance banks, insurance companies, capital markets, brokerage houses. Every other institution in Pakistan has to comply with this requirement to transform or convert by the end of 2027. So talking about the specifics of the banking industry in Pakistan and the way the asset book is distributed. So my first question, obviously, Rehmat, is to you, because obviously you being one of the CEO of one of the largest banks in Pakistan, you would come across this as one of the most important challenges. And considering the fact that almost 95% of the investments by the banks in Pakistan is in government securities, and the fact that we are at an ADR, asset advances deposit ratio, historically it has been 40%, and maybe even now it is not going to be more than 45%. So we're talking about almost like more than 50% of the asset book being converted to Islamic instruments, and that is going to be the only way you could transform or convert your deposits, because then there will be asset liability mismatches. So how do you think this the availability of Sukuk is going to be acting as a catalyst in terms of ensuring a quicker and a smoother transition from conventional banking to Islamic banking? Especially considering the fact that what Irfan Sahab has just mentioned, there are alternatives available. So how do you think the government is pursuing these objectives and these pursuits? And how do you think you as an institution would be able to address those?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for the question, Faraz. And Irfan Sahab, thank you for a very excellent and clear presentation on the main hurdle that may be there for the complete transformation of the present Pakistani banking sector from conventional to Islamic. I do think that, as Irfan Sahab said, without the government securities availability, this process will be very slow, if not impossible, as he said. Just to put it in perspective, at National Bank, we have a deposit base of around 4 trillion rupees. So just for the SLR, Irfan Sahab, that would mean a requirement of about +1 trillion rupees of Sukuk, just for National Bank, and Habib Bank would have a similar kind of a demand. And if just to meet regulatory compliance, we're not talking about investments beyond that. And that demand clearly determines how the deposit base will transform from its current conventional deposit base to an Islamic deposit base. I do understand and that Irfan Sahab, yourselves and others are deeply involved in this determination as to how this availability of sukuks can be done by the government. And I think the responsibility of this should not be limited to the local banks providing input. And I think this forum here, there are not pools of knowledge, but a huge ocean of knowledge that is represented here from the world. And that is exactly where the input can come from, where there is a niyat in the form of our desire to convert, a legal enablement through the constitutional amendment and the Shariat court decision. But now we come to the practicalities of the actual process. And I think the eventual goal, as Irfan Saab said, 2028 onwards, that's not what I'm concerned about. It is actually the period of the transition. How does a balance sheet of the size and scale of what, 75% of the banking system now? 25% is Islamic already. So 75% of Pakistan's banking system, how does it move from one way of doing business to the Islamic concept? And I think it is not just going to be limited to us banks doing the practical part of converting branches, bringing product programs, which are Islamic banking oriented, but also from the intellectual capital that is represented by the schools, the centers of excellence, as well as the accounting community, as well as the, I mean, people like Irfan Saab who've been part of this Islamic banking introduction to Pakistan, and I would say pioneers, as well as the schools of thought that are available from Malaysia to the Gulf countries, how they would achieve this. And I think we as a banking community, as a regulators, we have to be amenable to accepting thought that comes from wherever it comes from and practically enabling this. And I think National Bank as a conventional bank with an Islamic bank, we've already started the transition. However, this one aspect of sukuks is going to be critical. The second bit I think is very important when we talk about sukuks is the pools that are available, not in knowledge, but all the potential markets for sukuks for green, public-private partnerships, etc., that can really accelerate the transition of individual banks' balance sheets from conventional assets to Islamic or Sharia compliant assets, and therefore the balance sheet percentage improves. And that work, I think there's a lot of potential for it. I'm not sure how quickly and how aggressively that transition can take place, because there is a demand for infrastructure in Pakistan, and the sukuk can enable the fulfillment of that demand because of its very structure, be it a green sukuk, be it an infrastructure sukuk, or be it any other variant that can be there. So I think we're looking at a sukuk as a huge potential, but the government sukuk is going to be key to the success of the transition. Thank you.
So I think that's a very valid observation that you have made. Rehmat, is in relation to the fact what's going to be the size of sukuk that we are talking about, only to meet the current requirements of sukuk to replace the banking sector or to replace the financial sector, conversion is going to be in more than 30 trillion. And we are talking about the future needs of the country. We're talking about the future needs that may arise from climate risk. We are talking about future risk that may arise from infrastructure needs. So we're talking about not lesser than around 50 trillion Sukuk availability in the next 3 years or so. So we should definitely be planning in accordance with this. And obviously, we would like to know about the roadmap that the regulators and also, the government must be having in their mind in relation to the issuance of these sukuk, so that the banking institutions, the other institutions, could be able to craft their transformation and convergence journeys accordingly. Otherwise, obviously, this is going to be a last-minute surprise for them in terms of managing their asset liability mismatches on the Islamic books. So I think this is going to be a very, very important area, and I'm sure Irfan Saab, Rehmat, yourself, as well as Atif and Basir are going to be very instrumental in voicing their requirements and also making sure that this happens within the banking sector and also in the other different areas of economy. So my next question is to Mr. Atif Hanif, who is obviously representing AlBaraka, who is the platinum sponsor, the main contributor, one of the main contributors of this conference. So first of all, thank you very much, Atif, for arranging this wonderful session. It's been an eye-opener considering the fact that we have had so much of discussions with many of the people who did not really represent the banking industry or the regulatory or the regulators, but they really were able to share some of the important independent thoughts with us with regard to Sukuk and its importance. So my question therefore to you is going to be around the Sukuk, the relevance of Sukuk in the context of Pakistan. We have heard about the fact that Sukuk we've learned about the Sukuk issuance. We also know about the size of Sukuk in Pakistan, sovereign Sukuks and the corporate Sukuks to a certain extent. So if you could share your thoughts about some of the important aspects of Sukuks in Pakistan and how do we shape our future roadmap. And also, if you could highlight the role that AlBaraka Bank has been playing in the development of Sukuk market. Obviously, this is one of the areas in which you have done this, conference on Sukuk. So the contribution that AlBaraka Bank has been doing in relation to the Sukuks in Pakistan.
Thank you, Faraz. First, I'll answer the AlBaraka aspect of the role. As you know, that AlBaraka Bank exists in 13 countries and is part of our ABG group, AlBaraka Banking Group. We have one of the pioneers of the Islamic banking globally, have a lot of contribution in terms of development of the organizations that are regulating Islamic banking like IOFI. In Pakistan, we are lucky that part of the AlBaraka group is the Islamic Chamber of Commerce and Development and AlBaraka Forum. These two organizations are part of the overall the group that AlBaraka Bank is part of, and their goal is to develop Islamic banking and economy globally, and also the Islamic economy in the Muslim countries. About 57 Islamic countries are members of Islamic Chamber of Commerce and Development, and we are lucky that their head office is based in Karachi. So part of our transformation of AlBaraka Bank, which we have undertaken for the last 2 years, we are looking at all possible areas which can create a synergy for the overall ecosystem of Islamic banking in Pakistan and development of Islamic economy in Pakistan. So for last 2 years, I thank Sheikh Yusuf Khalawi for putting Pakistan on the top of his map of activities and conferences. 3 conferences were held last year, and I will say a round of applause for such a focus on Pakistan now. And this conference itself is an evidence that how AlBaraka Bank feels that we can contribute towards the development of Islamic banking and Sukuk, and contribute also and facilitate to the conversion of the conventional banking into Islamic banking in Pakistan. We intend to, like Sheikh Yusuf said yesterday in the reception, that the platform of AlBaraka Forum is being used globally to promote and facilitate a subject of importance in various countries. So we intend to hold similar conferences on Sharia perspective by inviting Sharia scholars from at least the 13 countries where we exist, and also from the AlBaraka platform, so many other important Sharia fraternity globally, to facilitate the conversion of conventional banking into Islamic in Pakistan. About Sukuks, a lot has been said, and a great presentation by Irfan sahab. Although it's a small size compared to conventional PIBs and T-bills, but it has developed very well in last 4 or 5 years. There was complete dearth of Sukuks 5-6 years ago, and now Alhamdulillah it has improved to almost 5 trillion rupees, like Irfan sahab said. And the challenge is now two things. Number one, the requirement of the conventional bank and Islamic banks, and number two is the debt, raising of debt for the federal government. The requirement, like it is 43 trillion right now, it is going to grow by at least 15 to 20% as a banking industry. So that is going to be a challenge. But at the same time, the total debt of Pakistan, domestic debt, is now 47 trillion rupees. This used to be 26 trillion in 2021. And it is growing by at least 20% every year. Now, if we include the foreign debt, our debt to GDP ratio is 66%. So now, although there is a big challenge in product gap of Islamic banking in terms of Sukuks, that how do we, even if there's 38 trillion of conventional instruments needs to be converted into Islamic, the requirement is assets. Are there enough assets, 38 trillion, with the federal government to provide for the Sukuk development? So they are not. When we look deeper into this, on the availability of assets, the reality is that now, after certain constitutional amendments, most of the assets are now with the provinces and not with the federal government. So there are multiple challenges in this, but the bottom line remains that if the debt is already 66% of GDP and it is growing by 20%, is this sustainable for Pakistan? So maybe the Islamic banking and the covenants of the Sharia compliance is a blessing for Pakistan in the long run. Because for sustainability of Pakistan economy, the compulsion of converting this debt into Islamic instruments will create a check and balance on the growth of this unmanageable debt. Since the products used by countries like Malaysia and many other countries for asset-light Sukuks and the Tawarruk, the reality is, I was speaking to an expert in Malaysia a few days ago, and the lady is one of the pioneers of Sukuks in that country. She said that because of Tawarruk, the confidence and repute of Islamic banking and Sharia compliance in Malaysia has deteriorated significantly. And now they intend to address that by going away from Tawarruk. So in Pakistan, we are lucky that we have Sheikh Taqi Usmani Saab's presence here in Pakistan, and they are quoting Sheikh Taqi Usmani Saab's apprehension about Tawarruk, which they now realize that this was true. So we need to find solutions, but while there is a challenge, there are opportunities also. Like Rehmat said, that the development projects, at least, the PSDP of the federal government, it provides an initial opportunity for Sukuk development, because they are new projects, they are going to have assets, there will be dams, there will be roads, there will be so many other assets, and as we know, PSDP is huge for Pakistan, and later on, this can be even used by provincial governments for PSDP. So, in overall, converting the debt instruments into Sukuk will in the benefit of Pakistan as our debt will start disciplining and checked. At the same time, a great development that has taken place is the listing of Sukuks and offering of the Sukuks on stock market. So PSX has now options for investors other than simple shares. Now they can invest in Sukuks, and the first issue was, I think, 30 times oversubscribed. And this shows that even if there are provincial government projects that they want to issue through, develop through Sukuks, there will be some appetite, risk and reward appetite, and based on that the pricing will be established. So to begin this transitional journey, PSDP is an area where the focus is required, and since there is a strong commitment of the federal government, the regulators, the banks, there is a great opportunity for converting the PSDP in the initial state into Sukuks.
So thank you very much, Atif. I think you very well explained the context of development of Sukuk market in Pakistan and also the future needs, and how do we all wish that the developments happen in the context of both federal and the provincial government to be able to address the market demands and needs, especially by the end of 2027 and going forward as well. This brings me to the conversation with Mr. Irfan Siddiqui. Irfan Saab, you have very well highlighted the potential size of the market in Pakistan and also the kind of journey that we have to follow in order for us to be able to transform from the conventional instruments, the sizable conventional instruments that we currently have, to the Islamic alternatives. So obviously Sukuk is one of those alternatives, and we had a discussion a while ago as well, is that Sukuk is a structure, is an instrument. The purposes can be manifold. The purpose could be to address climate risk. The purpose could be to invest in education. The purpose could be as simple as to invest in any of the infrastructure projects. So essentially, at a national level, obviously, we are having a number of problems, a number of macroeconomic issues, such as the one that has been talked about by Atif, which relates to government debt to GDP ratio. And also, obviously, the inflation control is one of the areas that we have been struggling for quite a long period of time. And then, obviously, the fiscal, sustainability is also one of the concerns that we have had over the last several years. So, how do you see, in the broader context, the role of Sukuks in presenting solutions to these problems? Since you talked about the sovereign Sukuks, so how do you see the availability of sovereign Sukuks solving, as one of the means to solve these problems? So what's your view on this, Irfan Saab?
Right, thank you, Faraz. Like you said, I think the availability of Sukuks have to be increased. And one thing, before I start, I should have done it while I was there. Mashallah, Sheikh Yusuf Kalabi has taken this initiative. And I also attended the last forum in London, and really the depth of knowledge and people who gathered there, is those type of people who could help Pakistan in getting there. And I'm glad our senior leadership team from State Bank they were here this morning, and I think they should draw on this knowledge. So thank you so much, Sheikh Kalabi, for doing that. I think, to have more availability of Sukuks, if I get that is your question, there has to be that desire of getting it. On a lighter note, our colleague, his name is Rehmat, right? And the organizers are Baraka. And both are very synonymous terms, Rehmat and Baraka. But only Rehmat and Baraka are not going to bring Sukuks, right? No matter how hard what we agree, but what we need other than Rehmat and Baraka is the will behind that. Because if we say that God will do it, what comes to my mind is that when we go to Saudi Arabia, we do Sa'i, which is reflective of Bibi Hajra running 7 times between the 2 mountains in a lot of heat, right, with a small little child for water, right? God could have given the water from rain, but after doing a lot of effort, and that is the meaning of the Sai, then the water came out, which is now Zamzam, right? So Zamzam flowed out of it, but with effort. I mean, who gave that water was God. But after Bibi Hajra did 7 rounds of hardship in a desert. So we need to do those rounds ourselves. We need to do those Sai in order to, take the meaning of Rehmat and Baraka in fruition. And that is a collective, responsibility. It's not the responsibility of, I think Central Bank is doing a lot. We have formed, the government has formed a steering committee which is headed by the Finance Minister, chaired by the Governor. It's a very high-powered committee. And I think because of that, like Atif said, that, from zero we have come to 5 trillion, which is a good step. At least it's given us a stencil. The other stencil it's given us is that because of the demand from the public at large, all the conventional banks have Islamic windows, right? I think if they don't have Islamic windows, they have a full-fledged Islamic bank as a subsidiary. So the Islamic banking landscape is already inside the conventional banking system. So now to convert, it's not a rocket science, it's just that little effort. Maybe we've done, out of that 7 rounds, they've done 3 rounds, 4 rounds are left, and we'll get that Zamzam water. But we need to do that. So assets are there, asset-light Sukuks are available in the, obviously in the world. We need to really sit down and, be determined that we need to find that answer. And asset-light we've been working on for the last 3 years, 4 years, right? Whenever we talk to people who matters, they would say that, we should develop asset-light Sukuk, otherwise this will not happen. Now who is that we? It's all of us, including our government, the central bank. And I'm sure if they get together and determine that, we're going to meet every day, like the Chief Justice Saab was here in the court, when we have some important matter, they would say that the proceeding will happen on a day-to-day basis. Every day there will be a hearing, right? Otherwise, in normal circumstances, because the courts are overloaded, they would do one hearing today, one maybe after 2 months. And that's why it takes long time. So we need to do that kind of a rhythm, where we need to sit down and really ensure that we find a solution. And I am 100% sure that we will find a solution only if there is that will. Otherwise, what happens is we do half the work, somebody else will say, no, what you've done, part A, part B is okay, part C is not okay. Then we go back to the drawing board. So that commitment from everybody has to be there, the legislature, the central bank, the banks, especially the conventional banks, because they have to transform. I think for them, the roadmap is difficult. But Islamic banks is already there. And I think, as all the Islamic banks here, AlBaraka, he's representing Bank Islami as well as owners, we are all committed to it. But we need to do that last mile to make it happen. Otherwise, we'll be talking about it, and if the fuel is not there, it will not come. So sorry, my things are not very technical, it's all more exemplars, So Baraka wants to hire this room, and they said we want, I don't know how many, 14 chandeliers in this room. They said, fine, 14 chandeliers will be there, but when Atif comes in there, only 2 are lit. He said the electricity which we got from behind is only good enough for 2. So obviously we can't have this conference then, in dark. So that's the same thing that, we want to convert, we want to hire this room, the government wants to convert, the court has decided to convert, the government has passed legislation for that, but we need to bring that electricity power behind it to light all the 14 chandeliers. Thank you.
I think very well said. It's because there has to be an emergency declared for enablement of all these initiatives at the government level. Otherwise, obviously, without having these enablers in place, conversion by 2027 is something very difficult, if not impossible, as rightly described by Irfan Saab. And my next question is to Mr. Basir Shamsie, who is the Chief Executive Officer of JS Bank. So Basir, we have been talking a lot about the availability of Sukuk within the country, and we have been talking a lot about the long-term impacts of the Sukuk availability in relation to solving the problems of the country, especially the conversion of the banking industry and other industries by 2027. But now my discussion with you is going to revolve around the cross-border capital flows in relation to Sukuk. So how do Sukuk helps in relation to cross-border flows? Obviously, one of the primary problems that we have been facing in Pakistan is to attract the foreign direct investment into the country. And we have not been that impressive in relation to the foreign direct investment. So your views on the role of Sukuks in ensuring this, and how do we ensure that, how do we actually make it possible that in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, we've got some roadmap in that context.
Thank you, Faraz. So I'm an industry practitioner, meaning the sense by my background is in treasury investment banking. So I will be a bit more technical, and we've spoken a lot about the public sector and the government not issuing enough Sukuks. So from a cross-border perspective, we know how large the GCC market is. It's around $1 trillion in Islamic finance, of which about 40% is Sukuks. Now, then there's the whole green market for Islamic instruments. But so what is the challenge? Why has Pakistan not been able to attract flows? So on the positive side, there are two good things. So Pakistan has had a long history of capital market development. I remember doing a transaction as a Sukuk bond in 2005 for WABDA, along with Citibank. And then so there's a long history. The government issues, even though the issuance is not enough, but these are publicly traded Sukuks. So there's a capital market infrastructure already present in Pakistan. The regulator, the SECP, has fantastic regulations, approval processes. So all of that is there. So if all of that is there, and we have gone as far back as 2005 to issue the first Sukuk in the quasi-private public sector, then why are we so challenged today in terms of cross-border flows? So I look at it from multiple perspectives. So the first is that because of the constant rupee devaluation, hard currency investors are reluctant for larger periods of time to come into soft currency investments. And Pakistan has had periods of stable exchange rates and then periods of very rapid devaluation. So that's one problem. The other problem that we are challenged with is there's not enough issuance. There's not enough creation of paper. Now, for the private sector, for example, mid-tier steel maker, the transaction size is so small, no global investor would be looking to invest in that transaction size. They're looking really at 10 or 20x those transaction sizes. I remember this transaction of 2005. Back then it was 8 billion rupees, which in today's terms would be like 50 or 80 billion rupees, and that was private sector. So now it's the size of the transactions. Now, when we go back to the federal, so where will these massive size of transactions come through? Today, when we look at it, the private sector, the demand for credit is just not there. And it's certainly not there for transactions of this size. We are not expanding in cement, we are not expanding in steel, we are essentially not expanding in conventional telecom. So where does this energy, particularly other than some solar, but as a country, we are energy surplus by 40%. So overall, there is not much demand on the energy side either. That was historically the case a few years ago. So where is this going to come from? So it has to come from infrastructure. Now, when we come to infrastructure, the problem lies is that the provinces don't have borrowing powers. So under our constitution, the provinces cannot directly go to capital markets and borrow. After the 18th Amendment, as one of the other speakers pointed out, the cash flow is with the provinces, the assets are with the provinces, but they actually don't have borrowing power. So that is where the challenge is. In fact, unlike the federal government, which is cash flow challenged, almost all the provinces today are cash flow surplus. Even Sindh is cash flow surplus, Punjab certainly is, and even the smaller provinces today are cash flow surplus. Yet, at this time, whereas we could expand infrastructure development 5x, they look at cash flows from current subsidy, flows that come to them from the divisible pool, from the federal government, and whatever collections, tax collections they have on their own. So they cannot actually monetize in the next 10 years of cash flows. So to me, the immediate solution to this is allowing the provinces to borrow funds directly. And there we then have large infrastructure projects, we have highways, we have bridges, we have tunnels, especially in the KP and GB side. We have clean energy projects, particularly in the GB side and KP side. And that's where we can attract large transactions, where global investors can come in, global investment banks can come in, and they would lead those transactions and bring the global markets to us, including AlBaraka and others. So that is one challenge we need to address. Two is the currency risk challenge. So now currency risk, even today we have a branch in Bahrain, we principally invest in dollar assets because our liabilities are dollar. We can't go around buying euros and hedging a euro exposure every time. So we will go and invest in either dollar indexed currency bonds or straight out USD bonds. So I think time has now come that Pakistani corporates, as well as if the provincial governments followed by the municipal governments, if they are allowed to borrow, they should be allowed to borrow hard currency. Now, the minute you do that, and at the back end, of course, banks will provide the hedge, you now have a market for a 200 billion rupee transaction coming out of Punjab or Sindh, and it is dollar hedged or it's dollar denominated. They have the infrastructure project. The government, provincial government has cash flow surplus, plus the project itself, because Sukuks are also asset-based, and the project cash flows are there to then repay the debt. So the whole perspective changes. And I think we now, having done this for so long, and frankly, we used to do a transaction, a capital market transaction, I remember, in the best of times, one a month, to now doing one a year or two a year. I think the next generation of bankers that now come in, we need to solve these problems for them, because we have regressed in the last 10 years. And if we can solve these problems for them today, the people in this room who are 30-something, they will have a fantastic ride creating a market similar to that we have in the UAE and in Malaysia and other GCC countries. So that's my submission. Thank you.
And in the interest of time, I think it is a good idea to open the floor for any questions that the audience may be having. It's a good time to interact with people at large. And obviously with our esteemed panelists, they should be able to answer any of your queries or any of the areas that you'd like to discuss with us.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, very big thanks to the organizers for arranging this amazing event with the great minds. बड़ा अच्छा आउटपुट और बहुत ज़्यादा नॉलेज मिली, डेटा मिला. मेरा सवाल बहुत मुख्तसर है. स्टार्ट करूँगा एक छोटे से डेटा से. वो ये कि गुजरात, इंडिया, 6 करोड़ वहाँ की आबादी है, और 6 करोड़ में से 1 करोड़ वहाँ पर स्टॉक मार्केट में इन्वेस्टर्स हैं. मतलब 1 करोड़ वहाँ पर अकाउंट खोले हुए उन्होंने. पाकिस्तान की आबादी 24 करोड़ है और 3 लाख अकाउंट्स हैं हमारे. तो ये बड़ा अच्छा डिस्कशन हो रहा है यहाँ पर सुकूक बॉन्ड्स पे, ये सारी चीज़ें. लेकिन मैं ये समझता हूँ कि पाकिस्तान में जो फाइनेंशियल एजुकेशन है वो बहुत ज़्यादा पीछे है। हमारे पास उतने अकाउंट्स भी नहीं हैं और लोग घबराते हैं, कतराते हैं अकाउंट्स खोलने में। तो मैं ये समझ रहा हूँ कि ये सब अच्छा इवेंट तो है, बहुत अच्छी डिस्कशंस भी हो रहे हैं, लेकिन मैं समझता हूँ क्योंकि लोगों को जब ABC अगर नहीं पता, या लोगों ने ये ऐसा मुझे लगता है कि जैसे हम सेकेंडरी में बच्चे को डाल रहे हैं प्राइमरी के बजाय डायरेक्ट, मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है, क्योंकि ये सारी चीज़ें लोग तब समझ पाएंगे जब लोग बेसिक चीज़ें समझते हैं कि सेविंग अकाउंट, करंट अकाउंट। लोग अभी हम डिबेट रख रहे हैं कन्वेंशनल बैंकिंग, इस्लामिक बैंकिंग, लेकिन लोगों को कन्वेंशनल बैंकिंग ही नहीं पता, लोगों को तो कैपिटलिज्म ही नहीं पता। तो हम ये सारी चीज़ें रहे हैं। तो बस मेरा ये छोटा सा सवाल ही है कि क्या प्लान कर रहे हैं आप जैसे ग्रेट माइंड्स, जो वो माइंड्स जो आसानी कर सकते हैं, ठीक है, एजुकेट कर सकते हैं। मैं समझता हूँ कि बहुत ज़्यादा एजुकेशन का गैप है यहाँ पर, तो आप लोग कैसे प्लान कर रहे हैं एजुकेशन के लिए? थैंक यू।
Irfan sir, would you like to respond to this? I think this is about awareness. So the question is about
Right,
how
I
do we
think,
inculcate the awareness?
Very pertinent question. Obviously, as you are aware, our central bank is actually working very hard on promoting financial literacy. In fact, all banks are required to take sessions in smaller areas, towns, villages. ये बड़ा लंबा process है. You know, our education level in Pakistan, unfortunately, is very low, and we have to again admit that. If we don't admit that, then I'm glad you raised that. Then you know we would not even find a solution. तो बात तो आपकी बिल्कुल सही है. Unfortunately, you know, there's so much to do, but I think I would say कि इसमें self help की बहुत ज़रूरत है. हम में से हर एक का एक सर्कल ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंस है. आपका एक अलग सर्कल ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंस होगा, फराज साहब का अलग सर्कल ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंस होगा. आई थिंक वी नीड टू एजुकेट आवर चिल्ड्रन. अगर स्कूल्स में नहीं हो रहा तो हम खुद करें. वी हैव टू टेक बेबी स्टेप्स इन ऑर्डर टू गेट देयर, एंड इंशाल्लाह विद दैट कमिटमेंट, इफ़ वी ऑल बी पार्ट ऑफ इट, देन वी विल गेट देयर. अगर हम सिर्फ छोड़ दें रेगुलेटर्स पे, किसी और पे कि वो करेंगे, तो फिर हमारा हाल बस वैसे ही चलते रहेगा वो. थैंक यू.
So I think it's very important. National culture is also very important, and therefore it's now think about the enormity of challenges that we have at hand. While obviously to ensure all this transformation, conversion, Islamic banking, facilitation by 2027, we also have to ensure that we work on the area that you've just described. So this is why we have been focusing a lot on the speed and the quality of enablement that has to be provided by the regulators and by the other bodies in for this conversion to happen, and also for the ecosystem to be developed for the future years to come. Otherwise, this transformation conversion is not probably going to yield the requisite results. So this is a very, very important change that we are witnessing as a nation. So we should be knowing about its challenges and its implications, and therefore we should be prepared to address those challenges that are going to come in the future as well. Otherwise, there's probably not going to be any value that we would get from this transition or conversion.
I'll just like to add to this that while all banks are following State Bank instructions, like Irfan Sahab said, on financial literacy, all Islamic banks also have very strong plans and awareness programs. In our case, we have chosen a very specialized awareness program, considering, like the gentleman just said, that the unbanked or financially not included section of population is huge in Pakistan. One of the main reasons behind this is that the most powerful voice in our communities are the khatib of the masajid, who, when they say sood haram hai, they don't say Islamic banking halal hai. Because this very good Sharia scholar fraternity which has emerged in Pakistan in the last 20 years is primarily centered in large cities. But 70–80% population of Pakistan is in smaller and rural areas. So what we have done in AlBaraka is that we have started ulama conferences in especially smaller cities. We are in 74 small cities. So the SOP is very clear. We invite about 100 people. 20 are the khatib of masajid around our branches, and 80 are existing and potential customers. So first time when somebody from Darul Uloom addresses them about the Sharia compliance in Islamic banking, and then they are welcome to ask questions, the population at large, when they see their own masajid khatib interested and talking about and asking questions on Sharia and Islamic banking and finance, and towards the end, the most senior khatib is asked to come to the stage and share his views. So 99% of the time, the last comment from the senior most khatib is that I have come to know today that in banking there is a halal aspect as well. So this riba sensitivity or Sharia sensitivity is the single most important reason for no financial inclusion or very less financial inclusion. So everyone is, needs to do their part, and like Irfan Sahab said, we are all part of this awareness program.
Professor Kabir Hassan. I am now visiting Pakistan IBA at Hamid D. Habib chairholder, but I'm a professor of finance at the University of New Orleans, Louisiana, USA. So ever since I came, I spent almost a week, attending different events and lecturing and so on. So one of the chatter that I'm hearing, you must convert this system by January 1st, 2028. If you flash back a little bit, 1998, Justice Taqi Usmani, that famous verdict, that elimination of riba of Pakistan, those who believe in Islamic finance was applauded this. So, for moving fast forward, then that verdict has been tampered with, has been this, that, and so on. And when I talk in private with my friends in Pakistan, the 28th Amendment, and many people said it's not done even constitutionally. So the chatter that I'm hearing from this distinguished Pakistani, practitioner, that there is a doubt in your mind some way. Is it possible? It's difficult. So aren't you creating an environment that the 28th Constitution may be changed again? If it does, then you will really go behind. The reason I'm saying this, I like what Brother Irfan said. If you are pushed to the wall, then you'll come up with a solution. One of the criticisms that I hear, how do you convert 66% Pakistani public debt? You don't have enough asset. You don't even know how much asset you have, right? First thing you find out where the asset is, 18th Amendment that you mentioned, we can bring there a different solution if there's a will. 3 years is not a short time. It's a very long time to convert this entire banking system. 75% of the banking is conventional. Convert this into Islamic. See, the change will happen. I think will has to be there. If you create the chatter, I'm not sure, it's a good idea, but you are the establishment in Pakistan, you really hold tight. Okay, no, we are going to convert it. Because if you do, believe me, the rest of the world, 57 will follow you, will try to convert to Islamic banking. And the reason is that it is not only, we are talking about that the riba or this current ecosystem is inequitable. It really creates, the country I'm coming from, we have $34 trillion national debt. This, Bogart who came to power, Donald Trump, he just changes every day. He's trying to run the country according, he's like a king and so on. But at least we have the system, and we have the institution. He cannot really go far. The point I'm trying to say, we are worried about in the United States, in a conventional sense, the debt we are trying to reduce. And Islam, riba is one of the deadliest sin in Islam, and we really need to get out of this thing. And if we do, Baraka will come, Rehmat and Baraka will combine together, inshallah.
So I believe it's a question, and is it a question? And you try to ask whether or not we are convinced that we would be able to get converted by 2027. So I think who is going to, Irfan Sahab, would you, because obviously since you are part of that committee, you are aware of the developments.
No, I think fully agree with brother, and I hope that what he's saying, we put more efforts in it. But you see, I am a believer myself. Maybe our scholars may not agree with 100% of what I'm saying, but it has to be a process which will take one step at a time, because Pakistan did try to do conversion once before as well, and because we wanted to do it too rapidly, it did not work out, right? The infrastructure was made at that time. So I think, like I said, whether it's migrating from 22% to 100%, or whether it goes from 22% to 50%. If the niyat is right, you know, we are doing all of this for what reason? For pleasure of Allah, right? That is the single, that has to be the single most objective, that riba is haram. We want to eliminate that, and we work towards eliminating that. And we have to do it in a manner which is conducive and which will give the right results. If for example, if it's felt that by running too fast or driving at a speed of 300 km per hour on a highway, the chances of accident and fatality is high, then we should slow down that speed, because the ultimate objective is to get there. So I think a very fast conversion could also be detrimental, but at the same time, I am again echoing that we need to activate ourselves, because 3 years is a long period of time. Otherwise, even 30 years would be a short period as well. If we say in 30 years, people would say 30 years is not good enough, because, you know, it will take 300 years. So we have to work hard, but if it doesn't happen 100%, let it, you know, I mean, a lot of time when you talk to people, they will say, well, you're talking about conversion, what will happen to the IMF loan? My answer is that, okay, forget about IMF loan, do what you can do first. If we can convert our sukuks into Sharia compliant, we'll be 50% minimum Islamic, right? If we ask our government organization, which is called the SOEs, state-owned enterprises, that they can only borrow Sharia compliant unless approved by somebody that they cannot do it, then that will get another 10-20%, because what we've seen in practice is that it's never a problem giving loans or financing to a company. We find a way, a Sharia compliant way out of it. So your entire financing book can be converted if there is a compulsion on that. So inshallah, I think bit by bit we'll get there, but your point is absolutely right. I think this lady's been trying to ask a question.
Here, our honorable judges and all the other persons are talking about big infrastructure and investments. Here I want to highlight small-scale dependency, self-dependency, not aid from foreign aid. Instead, we have to be self-dependent. So I have an idea to build public spaces into vegetable gardens or fruit orchards, but no one wants to take the responsibility here. So if we create those places, instead of planting fancy plants to decorate our places, we can be self-dependent, like rooftop vegetable gardens, and we can invest on vertical gardens. And we can give small incentives to people, because from farm to market and then to consumers, it's a large gap, and it takes lots of fuel and energy, and the prices are high. So my question is about trash sorting and practices no one is willing to. So I have some ideas if people do, or if the awareness is there, because schools are not willing to, they're just theoretical, not practical. So what are your incentives, small-scale incentives, creating, building public places or parks, or even to these plants and vegetable or fruits orchards? And internationally, we have trash sorting in a large scale. But in Pakistan, we can do dry or wet sorting. Initially, it can save a lot of, because we have trash pickers, but lots of it's wasted compost and all that. So we can make animal pits, and we can make shopping bag mats for homeless, and this is all from the small scale.
If I may conclude your question, sister, I think we have to take these baby steps of creating small SME environments. I would suggest कि हमारे बैंक से बहुत सारे लोग हैं यहाँ पर, सारे Islamic banks से भी हैं, तो आप please ज़रूर उनको बताएं, because you know right now we are also under pressure by the regulator to invest into agri, into SMEs, and we are quite frankly short of ideas and avenues as well. तो बेबी स्टेप्स लेंगे इंशाल्लाह, आप ज़रूर कांटेक्ट करें, सब लोग मौजूद हैं यहाँ मुख्तलिफ बैंक्स के, And inshallah, we'll try to see what we can do on that. तो आप इसके बाद अगर
मतलब who can I contact to? किससे contact करूँ?
Any volunteers from AlBaraka Bank, Meezan Bank, anybody?
आसिफ साहब, आप अपने किसी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव को खुद से मिला लें।
तो आप आपसे बात कर लेंगे। जी प्लीज।
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Najmul Hassan. I'm CEO MacPack Films Limited. Actually, my one question and one suggestion from all the panelists. First of all, really very wonderful and very informative discussion from all the panelists, and AlBaraka, I'm really grateful for the AlBaraka for organizing this event. My question is this: basically, we really talked about the government sukuks from the SLR perspective, from the potential perspective, from all these perspectives, 38 million trillion, 38 trillion or whatever amount, 50 trillion, 30 trillion. But what about the corporate sukuk side? Because that's obviously, there is a potential from the SLR perspective for the banks, but their corporate sukuk is also a very big, area. And internationally, if globally you see, the corporate sukuk growth rates, the private sukuk growth rates are more than the global government sukuk rates. So what are the gaps? I mean, if you can share, what are the gaps, what are the potential and its solution for the corporate sukuks, number one. And the suggestion is from all the banks and especially from AlBaraka, because AlBaraka is always very aggressive in holding and organizing these kind of awareness session. Because if we also give some sort of product we have to the corporate management side, because awareness about the product which we have. So this will also help in giving some sort of another thinking to the corporate people to give for the asset creation, and they can share with you, what product they can go for, that what asset they can create. So from that, if you give some sort of awareness in these kind of sessions for the corporate, specific for the corporate people from the product side, so it might help in the further assets creation from the business community side.
Sure.
Thank
so
you.
Atif, if you could respond to this, Atif.
First of all, thank you for the suggestion. We have been holding a lot of activities in the corporate and commercial sector and even SME sectors. We even once invited Sheikh Yusuf Khalawi, who is an expert of family business, to speak about the sustainability over generations for the family business houses in Karachi. But as far as products is concerned, point taken. We will start holding these awareness sessions for our corporate customers as well. This is very much needed because most of the corporate customers, 75% banking is being done with the conventional banks, and they actually need to understand the entire basket of products of Islamic banking which they can use. And the second question about why is there so much small size corporate sukuk portfolio in Pakistan. Reason, in my opinion, is that this sukuk development has taken place in the last 5-6 years in true meaning. And this was the period where overall economy was under stress and new projects have not come up. The borrowing was at 22-23%, inflation was very high. So whether conventional or Islamic, the long-term lending during this period was very low. Now when the sukuks are developing and there's more awareness about sukuks, I see that there will be a robust growth in the corporate sukuks as well, because this is just a too early stage for all sectors to develop simultaneously.
So add on that, I think it's a very good question, and I wanted to cover that side as well, that there's no restriction, like government ka to ek asset ka masla hai and all these things, but there's no restriction right now. But so there are private, public sectors or private sector issuing sukuk, like K Electric has done it, Angro has done it. The reason, in my view, which is not forthcoming, and we should study that with SECP as well, and maybe with the Pakistan Stock Exchange, because the new CEO of Pakistan Stock Exchange, I was with him a few days, he's right there, okay. He was in my office a few days ago and looked very enthusiastic that, we should increase our penetration in that. So thank you on that. So, we have to see the charges associated in bringing a security on the stock exchange. Now, when we look at Angro and K Electric, the reason they would come to market, stock market in retail, is because they've exhausted their per-party ceilings with the banks, generally, right? Because their borrowing need is very high and the banking sector appetite is also limited. But smaller companies, they don't have that problem because the per-party ceiling of banks are very, very high, and the problem is that their credit limitation is also small. So I think stock market, like you're doing for the GEM board for equities, maybe what you should do is a GEM board for debt instrument where you facilitate smaller size securities, but with nominal fees, I would say. Because, you know, big fees, you're not going to get it. So it's like when we were talking about taxation on bonus issues. I mean, the government has put a tax on bonus issue, but how much money they collect on that is zero. Because nobody would come to that. So if you ask for too much money from small companies, then the answer would again be zero in terms of revenue, because nobody would be willing to pay for that. So if the pricing is good, I assure you that the Islamic banking market and the conventional bank windows of, we would encourage that by charging even lower fees on that, so that, you know, we encourage this sector. The debt market has to come up, and I think this is a very good suggestion, and I think we should all take it up amongst ourselves, that we should encourage not just SMEs, but, you know, our commercial customers which are of medium size, but not mega size. So I think maybe you can contact Atif, myself, our team as well, and we should, along with generosity of PSX and SECP, we should be able to handle that if there is a will. So I think on to you.
I just want to add to Irfan Saab and Atif. I think when you talk about private sector and the Sukuk market, the debate is more about whether a bank is willing to provide this as a bank facility, or the customer would like this to be a sukuk or a bond, right? That's the debate. That's the core debate. Now, if you have that debate, then it's all about the convenience, the speed, and the cost of both alternatives. Mostly sukuks are rated instruments. So when we're talking about higher ratings, then the availability of debt finance, Sharia compliant debt finance, is always there, and perhaps at times quicker than the time it takes for a sukuk to be underwritten, to actually come into existence from the date of origination. That speed has to come down to make that part, make it indifferent for an issuer or a borrower to say, oh, I think a sukuk issuance is okay, and we won't go to the borrowing alternative. Then comes the cost added to that, cost of borrowing versus the cost of issuance. And both of those issues run in tandem for every issuer. I can give you an example. When way back, TFCs were introduced as a way of borrowing for corporate sector, the first issuer of the TFC really didn't want to issue the TFC, but they said, okay, let's get the, we'll do it to get the market started. I'm talking about it in the 90s. Some issuers can do that, and they can, people like K Electric and Engro have also that they're running out of, they've borrowed enough from the banking system, they can look at alternatives. But for an average borrower in Pakistan, there are very few borrowers who run into that wall where, or if you want to say that, where they're running out of banking sector exposure or availability, good borrowers. And it is always that debate that also has to be kept in mind.
It's also the rating and the brand value of the organization, that comes into play. So thank you very much. I think we are running out of time.
Faraz, I just want to add, because Farrukh is also here, and I'm sure he could influence these things as well. Until 31st of December, we had a devil around, which was called ADR, asset deposit ratio, right? In which banks, we all know what banks did at that time, including National Bank, all of us. So, you know, there was this problem of financing ratio versus deposit. Now, if we invest in an Engro Sukuk or a small company Sukuk, that is regarded as an investment and not as a borrowing. Now, the asset deposit ratio, although the government has done away with that by charging 5% to close the devil in the locker, but it can come out anytime. So that definition of financing must include unsecured, non-government, non-sovereign Sukuk as well. Otherwise, this market would never develop. Because, you know, if I take out my Meezan Bank, why would we take a risk of giving money to, which company you say you're from? Sorry? MacPac. Why would we give money in Sukuk to MacPac when it will be an investment? We should tell MacPac, okay, take money from us on a straight borrowing basis because it will be safer for us. So I think that should be neutralized on that. So maybe something for you to evaluate as well.
Assalamu alaikum. मेरा एक सवाल है.
I think I'm sorry, my apologies. I know that every one of you has got a lot of questions, but since we are running short of time, this is what I wanted to indicate beforehand. Since we are running short of time, my sincere apologies, but all of them are here during the lunchtime as well. So if you would like to converse with any one of them, so including myself, we are all available. So thank you very much for the time that you have all taken. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.